Chapter 50. A Chat Between a Brother and Sister. During the time which Lord de Winter occupied in shutting and bolting the door and bringing a seat beside the easy-chair of his sister-in-law, her ladyship was thoughtfully directing her glance into the depths of possibility, and discovering the whole of that plot of which she could form no conception, so long as she continued ignorant of the person into whose hands she had unhappily fallen. She knew her brother-in-law to be a true gentleman who was fond of the chase, played freely, and was gallant in regard to women, but of powers below the average in respect to intrigues. How had he been able to know of her arrival and have her arrested, and why did he desire to detain her? Athos had let fall a few words which proved that her conversation with the cardinal had been heard by other ears, but she could not imagine that he could so promptly and so boldly lay a countermine. She rather feared that her former proceedings in England had been discovered. Buckingham might have guessed that it was she who had cut off his diamond studs, and have sought to avenge himself for that petty treachery. But Buckingham was incapable of any extremities against a woman, especially if that woman were supposed to have been actuated by a sentiment of jealousy. This supposition appeared the most probable. She thought that they wished to revenge the past and not to anticipate the future. But at any rate, she congratulated herself on having fallen into the hands of her brother-in-law, with whom she contemplated little difficulty, rather than into those of a former enemy. "Yes, brother, let us have some chat," she said with a sort of sprightliness, determined as she was to draw from this conversation, in spite of all the dissimulation which Lord de Winter might bring to it, such information as she needed to guide her former conduct. "You have made up your mind, then, to return to England," said Lord de Winter, "in spite of the determination you so often expressed to me in Paris, never again to set foot upon the territory of Great Britain?" Her ladyship replied to this question by another. "First tell me," said she, "how could you manage to have me watched so closely, as not only to know beforehand that I was coming, but also the day, the hour, and the port at which I should arrive?" Lord de Winter adopted the same tactics as her ladyship, thinking that, as her sister-in-law employed them, they were undoubtedly the best. "But tell me yourself, my dear sister, for what purpose are you to come to England?" "Why, I have come to see you," replied the lady, ignorant of how much she aggravated by this answer the suspicions which D'Artagnan's letter had excited in her brother-in-law's mind, and only wishing to captivate the kindness of her auditor by a lie. "Oh, to see me," said Lord de Winter sneeringly. "Assuredly to see you. What is there surprising in that? And you had no other motive in coming to England than to see me?" "No." "Then it is for my sake alone that you have given yourself the trouble to cross the straits?" "For you alone." Faith, your tenderness is excessive, my dear sister." "But am I not your nearest relation?" demanded the lady in a tone of the most touching simplicity. "And you are also my sole heiress, are you not?" said Lord de Winter, in his turn fixing his eyes upon those of her ladyship. "That is to say, through your son." Great as was her power of self-command, her ladyship could not refrain from starting, and as, in uttering these last words, Lord de Winter had laid his hand upon his sister's arm, the start had not escaped him. In truth, the blow was both direct and deep. The first idea in the lady's mind was that Kitty had betrayed her, and had disclosed to the Baron that interested aversion, whose manifestations she had imprudently permitted to escape her before her maid, and she also recollected the furious and impolitic attack which she had made on D'Artagnan after he had saved her brother-in-law's life. "I do not understand what you mean, my lord," said she, wishing to gain time and to make her adversary talk. "Is there some concealed signification in your words?" "Oh, no," said Lord de Winter with apparent good humour. "You wish to see me, and you come to England. I am informed of this wish, or rather I suspect that you feel it. and to spare you all the inconvenience consequent on a nocturnal arrival in the harbour, and all the fatigues of landing, I send one of my officers to meet you. I put a carriage at your disposal, and brings you here to this castle, of which I am the governor, where I come every day, and where, to satisfy our mutual desire of seeing one another, I have had an apartment prepared for your reception. What is there in all this the more surprising than in what you have told me? No, but what surprises me is that you should have received previous intelligence of my arrival. And yet it is the simplest thing in the world, my dear sister. Did you not observe that, on entering the roads, the captain of your little vessel sent forward his logbook and the register of his passengers and crew, that he might obtain permission to enter the port? I am the governor of the port. This book was brought to me, and I recognized your name. My heart told me what your speech has just confirmed, that is to say, your motive for thus braving the dangers of a sea so perilous, or at any rate so fatiguing at this season, and I sent out my cutter to convey you. You know what followed. Her ladyship was satisfied that his lordship lied, and she was only the more alarmed. Brother, said she, was not that the Duke of Buckingham who I saw on the jetty as I disembarked? Himself, replied Lord de Winter. Oh, I can well imagine that the sight of him would strike you. You come from a country where they must think a good deal about him, and I know that his armaments against France must engage the attention of your friend the Cardinal. My friend the Cardinal, exclaimed the lady, perceiving that on this point also, as on the other, Lord de Winter seemed to be equally well informed. Is he not your friend, then? Carelessly inquired the Baron. Oh, pardon me, I thought he was. But we will discuss his grace hereafter. Let us not abandon the sentimental turn which the conversation had taken. You came, you say, to see me? Yes. Well, I have told you that your wish shall be gratified, and that we are to see one another every day. Must I then remain here forever? Demanded the lady with some degree of dread. Do you find yourself badly lodged here, my dear sister? Ask for what you want, and I will hasten to provide it. But I have neither my own women nor my servants with me here. You shall have everything you want of that kind, only tell me what kind of establishment your first husband kept for you, and although I am but your brother-in-law, I will fix your present home upon a similar footing. My first husband, exclaimed the lady, looking at Lord de Winter with wildness in her eyes. Yes, your French husband, I do not mean my own brother. But if you have forgotten it, as he is yet alive, I can write to him, and he can send me the necessary information on the subject. Cold drops rolled down her ladyship's forehead. You're jesting, said she in a hoarse voice. Do I look like it? Inquired the Baron, rising and retreating a step. Or rather, you mean to insult me, continued she, convulsively grasping the arms of her chair, and raising herself by that means. I insult you, said Lord de Winter contemptuously, and do you really think that possible, madam? Sir, said her ladyship, you are either drunk or mad. Leave me and send me my women. Women are very indiscreet, my dear sister. Cannot I serve you as a waiting maid, and thus all our secrets will remain in the family? Insolent fellow, exclaimed her ladyship. Then, as if moved by a spring, she bounded toward the Baron, who awaited her with composure, yet with a hand upon the hilt of his sword. Ah, said he, I know that you have a habit of assassinating people, but I will defend myself, I warn you, even against you. Ah, you're right, said the lady, and you look to me like one who is coward enough to raise his hand against a woman. And if I did, I should have an excuse. Besides, mine would not be the first man's hand that has been laid upon you, I imagine. And the Baron, by a slow, accusing gesture, pointed to the lady's left shoulder, which he almost touched with his finger. Her ladyship uttered a hoarse cry and retreated to the further corner of the room, like a panther drawing back before its spring. Oh, roar at me as much as you please, exclaimed Lord de Winter, only do not try to bite, for I warn you that would only prove the worse for you. There are no lawyers here who regulate successions beforehand. There's no knight-errant who will pick a quarrel with me for the sake of the fair lady whom I keep imprisoned. But I have at hand judges that will dispose of a woman who, being already married, was shameless enough to intrude herself into our family, and these judges will hand you over to an executioner who will make you two shoulders alike." The eyes of her ladyship shot forth such lightning glances that, although he was an armed man before an unarmed woman, he felt the chill of fear penetrating his very soul. Nevertheless, he continued, but with increasing fury, "Yes, I understand, after having inherited my brother's property, you would like to inherit mine also, but be assured in advance, though you may be able to assassinate me or get me assassinated, my precautions are already taken. Not one penny of what I possess shall come either into your hands or into those of your son. Are you not already wealthy enough in the enjoyment of nearly 500,000? And can you not arrest yourself in your fatal course if you do not really do wickedness from a limitless and intense love of it? Oh, doubt not, if my brother's memory had not been still sacred to me, then you should be sent to rot in some dungeon of the state, or to satiate the curiosity of the mob at Tyburn. I shall, however, be silent, but you must learn to endure your confinement with tranquillity. In a fortnight or 3 weeks, I shall set out with the army for La Rochelle, but on the evening before my departure, you will be sent on board a vessel which I shall watch set sail, and which will convey you to one of our southern colonies, and you may rely upon it that I shall associate with you a companion who will blow out your brains on the first attempt that you may make to return to England or to the continent." Her ladyship listened with attention that expanded the pupils of her burning eyes. "Yes," continued Lord de Winter, "but at present you will continue in this castle. The walls are thick and the doors are strong. The bars are solid, and besides, your window looks directly down into the sea. My ship's company, who are devoted to me in life and death, keep guard around this chamber and command every passage that conducts into the courtyard. And even there you would find 3 iron-grated doors to pass which the watchword is requisite. Hence, therefore, a step or a motion or a word which bears the semblance of an intention to escape will draw their fire upon you. If you should be killed, English justice ought, I think, to be grateful to me for having spared her some trouble. Ah, your features have resumed their composure, and your countenance regains its confidence. 10 days or a fortnight, you say to yourself. Bah, by that time some idea will suggest itself to my inventive mind. I have an infernal disposition, I shall find some victim. Within a fortnight from this time I shall have escaped from here. Well, try your fortune." Finding her thoughts thus plainly read, her ladyship dug her nails into her flesh, that she might deprive her face of every expression but that of agony. Lord de Winter continued, "As to the officer who holds the command here in my absence, you have seen him. Therefore you already know him. You are aware that he can keep to his instructions, for you did not travel from Portsmouth here without trying to make him talk. What do you think of him? Could a marble statue be more impassive or mute? You have already tried the power of your seductions over many men, and unfortunately you've always succeeded. But try it now on this man, and by Jove, if you succeed, I shall believe you to be the very fiend himself." He went toward the door and opened it suddenly. "Call Mr. Felton," said he, and again, "Wait a moment, madam, and I will recommend you to his care." During the strange silence which was then maintained between them, the sound of a slow and regular step was heard approaching. In the shadow of the corridor a human form was soon apparent, and the young lieutenant, with whom we have already made acquaintance, stood at the door waiting for the Baron's orders. "Come in, my dear John," said Lord de Winter. "Come in and shut the door." The young officer entered the room. "Now," said the Baron, "look at this woman. She is young and beautiful, and she has every worldly attraction, but she is a monster, who, at 25 years of age, has committed as many crimes as you could have read of in a year in the archives of our tribunals. Her voice prepossesses you in her favor. Her beauty fascinates her victims. She will attempt to seduce you, perhaps to kill you. I have rescued you from misery, Felton. I have made you lieutenant. I have once saved your life, you remember on what occasion. I am not only your protector, but your friend, not only your benefactor, but your father. This woman has come to England to plot against my life. I've got the serpent into my power. Well, I call you here, and I say to you, my dear Felton, John, my son, defend me and guard yourself especially from this woman. Swear that you will preserve her for the punishment that she deserves. John Felton, I trust to your word. John Felton, I confide in your honor. My lord, answered the young officer, exhibiting on his open face all the hatred for the lady that he could find in his heart, I swear to you that everything shall be done as you desire. Her ladyship received this look like a resigned victim. It was impossible to see a softer or more submissive expression than that which then reigned upon her beautiful face. Scarcely could Lord de Winter himself recognize the tigress, which he had the instant before almost prepared to fight. "She must never leave this room, do you hear, John?" continued the Baron. "She must have no communication with anyone. She must speak to no one but yourself, if indeed you will do her the honor to talk with her." "It is quite enough, my lord, I've sworn." "And now, madam," said the Baron, "endeavour to make your peace with God, for you have been judged by men." Her ladyship let her head droop, as if she felt herself actually crushed by this sentence. Lord de Winter left the room, making a sign to Felton, who followed him, and closed the door. Directly afterwards was heard in the passage the heavy tread of a marine, who was keeping guard with his axe at his belt and his musket in his hand. Her ladyship remained for a few minutes in the same position, for she fancied that they might be watching her through the keyhole. Then she slowly raised her head, which had resumed a formidable expression of menace and defiance, ran to the door and listened, looked out the window, and returned to bury herself in an immense easy-chair and abandon herself to anxious consideration.